All right, so what are we talking about in this study? It's called Paradoxes in the Bible. A paradox in the Bible, and this is week 4 of the first paradox. So 4 weeks in, we're still on the first paradox. How many paradoxes are there, Mary? How many are we going to do? We don't know yet. But this is the first paradox, but it's week 4 of the first paradox. Paul's paradox. When I am weak, then I am strong. Okay, so real quickly, we defined the last couple of weeks what is a paradox. A paradox is a statement that appears at first to be contradictory, but upon reflection, it makes sense. Okay, so we talked about that last week, 2 Corinthians. We read that here.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is our context.
Yeah.
Because of these extraordinary character of the revelations, therefore, so that I would not become arrogant, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to torment me, so that I would not become arrogant. I asked the Lord 3 times about this, that it would depart from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect, complete in weakness. So then I will boast more gladly about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may reside in me. Therefore I am content with weaknesses, with insults, with hardships, with persecutions and difficulties, for the sake of Christ. For whenever I am weak, then I am strong.
And that was only 4 verses. So last week we looked at like almost that whole chapter. We looked at the context. What was Paul doing to finally get to those statements? All right, so the purpose of that thorn in the flesh, this is still review. The purpose of that thorn in the flesh, to prevent pride, to keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations. That's what Paul tells us. It was to thwart the pride that would have arisen out of Paul's heart. He knew it. He saw what it was. That's what it was there for. Paul had experienced extraordinary spiritual revelations. God used the thorn to humble him and to remind him of Paul's dependence on divine favor and guidance. Okay? And here's C. Suffering in Paul's life was not punishment. We so often assume it's punishment. We start questioning ourselves, what have I done? What have I done? Suffering in Paul's life was not punishment, but a refining process to set Paul apart. Spiritually, we call that to sanctify Paul. All that means is, I need to refine you. I need to get the junk out of your character because I have something for you to do. I need to set you apart from the world. That's all sanctification means. It means God has looked at you, he's poured his favor on you, and he says, I've got a mission for you, but I need you to change a little bit. I need to sanctify you and pull you out apart so you can do what I want you to do. That's all it means. This is why, I love this. This is why we ask ourselves this all the time. This is why bad things happen to good people. Very simple. Bad things happen to good people because, and the video is going to really show this day, because God sees a matrix of events far bigger than we possibly can imagine. And we simply are so narrow in our vision that when we see something bad, it can only be for our harm. And God says, oh no, you don't have a clue of all that I'm orchestrating. Okay, so let's play.
That's right.
This is a new video. This is a review, but it's a new video reviewing.
There are 3 books in the Bible known as the wisdom literature: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. The first, Proverbs, showed us that God is wise and just.
Yeah, we learned that God has ordered the world so that it's fair. The righteous are rewarded, the wicked are punished. In other words, you get what you deserve.
But then we meet Ecclesiastes, who observes, people don't always get what they deserve.
Yeah, he said the world isn't always fair, that life is unpredictable and hard to comprehend, just like smoke.
And this makes you wonder, okay, well, is God wise and just?
Exactly. And so it's that question that is being explored in the final book of wisdom, Job.
All right, let's dive in.
So Job begins with a strange story that takes place up in the heavens, which are described something like a heavenly command center. So God is there with these angelic creatures called the sons of God, and they're all there reporting for duty.
And God points out this guy Job.
Oh, so I forgot, Mary, I was supposed to pause this on this.
Right, pop quiz.
Pop quiz. What is this a picture of?
Divine counsel.
The divine council.
I love it.
It's all through your Bible. This is a picture of the divine council, the Elohim, little g gods, which scares Christians to say. That's what your Bible says. Little g gods. These are, and all that means, Elohim simply means spiritual beings. That's all it means. An angel is an Elohim. God is an Elohim. All it is a category. It means spiritual being. And what this is a picture of the divine council. It's spiritual beings in the presence of God.
Servant, showing how righteous and good he is.
And then one of these angelic creatures approaches. He's referred to in Hebrew as the Satan.
The Satan. Who is this?
Well, this word is actually a title, which literally means the one who is opposed. So out of this whole crew, he is the one questioning how God is running.
Now, pause there, dude. These are all things we talked about in the past, but just to remind folks, a lot of people, if they don't understand what's happening here, they look at that and they see the English word Satan, and they say, that's the guy from the garden. It is not. Satan, this is not a proper name. Satan in Hebrew means the accuser. It was a job title. Angel is messenger. Angel is a job title. An angel is an Elohim, a spiritual being, who has a type, a job. His job is to carry a message. That's all an angel. Angel is a job title. Satan is a job title. It's an accuser. He is to accuse, to contradict. He is to. It's like a lawyer. I'm going to give you the case while this person's guilty. It's an accuser.
And he proposes that Job might not actually love God, that he's only a good person because God rewards him. If God were to take away all of the good things he gave to Job, then we would see his true colors.
So he thinks Job is just working the system?
That's exactly right. Maybe he's obeying just to get what he wants.
So God agrees to this experiment and allows the Satan to inflict something on Job.
And Job loses everyone and everything that he cares about. It is devastating. And remember, he deserves none of this. God himself said so.
The remarkable thing is that in the midst of all this suffering, Job still praises God.
At least for chapters 1 and 2. But then in chapter 3, we find out how he's really feeling inside. He unleashes this poem that reveals his devastation. It's a long, elaborate curse on the day that he was born.
After this, some of Job's friends come to visit him to offer their help. And all of them are like, Job, you must have done something horribly wrong to deserve this. After all, we know God is just, and we know the world is ordered by God's justice and fairness, so you must be getting what you deserve.
And for the next 34 chapters, the friends and Job go back and forth in very dense Hebrew poetry. His friends keep speculating about why God might have sent such suffering, and they even start making up lists of hypothetical sins that Job must have committed. But after each accusation, Job defends his innocence.
And Job is innocent.
He is. He's also on an emotional roller coaster. At some moments, he's very confident that God is still wise and just.
Yeah, in other moments, he's doubting God's goodness.
He even comes to accuse God of being reckless, unfair, and corrupt. So by the end of the dialogue, Job demands that God come and explain himself in person. And God does so. He comes in the form of a great storm cloud.
Now, God doesn't give Job a direct answer. He doesn't tell Job about the conversation with the Satan.
Yeah, he does something very different. He takes Job on a virtual tour of the universe. He shows Job how grand the world is, and he asks him if he's even capable of running it or understanding it, just for a day. He shows Job how much detail there is in the world, things that we might see every day, but really don't understand at all. But God does. He knows it all intimately. He pays attention to the beauty and operations of the universe in ways that we haven't even imagined and in places that we will never see.
Then to conclude, God shows Job two wondrous beasts and brags about how great they are.
Yeah, they are dangerous. I mean, they would kill you without even thinking about it. And God says they're not evil. They're actually a part of his good world.
And then that's it. That's God's whole defense. It's kind of weird. I mean, what was this all about?
It seems to be this. From Job's point of view, it looks like God is not just. But God's perspective is infinitely bigger. He's dynamically interacting with a whole universe of complexity when he makes decisions. And this is what God calls his wisdom.
So Job asking God to defend himself is actually kind of absurd.
He couldn't comprehend this kind of complexity even if he wanted to.
So where does this leave us?
Well, it leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learned why he suffered, and yet he's able to live in peace and in the fear of the Lord.
But that's not where the book ends, because after this, God restores to Job double everything he had lost. And this, again, is surprising. I mean, is this a reward? Is God saying, congratulations, Job, you passed this elaborate test?
No, I mean, the whole book just made the point that Job losing everything was not a punishment, and so not getting it back isn't a reward.
So why does he get it back?
Well, apparently, God, in his wisdom, decided to give Job a gift. We don't know why. But what we do know is that Job is now the kind of person who, no matter what comes, good or bad, he can trust God's wisdom.
And that's the book of Job, and the end of our wisdom series.
These biblical books of wisdom are amazing. Each one offers a unique perspective on the good life, and you need to hear all of them together as you learn to live with wisdom and in the fear of the Lord.
Isn't that wild? That's just what a great 5 minutes of what the book of Job's about. Okay, where am I then? Okay, still reviewing God's answer. What's God's answer? God's answer to why will you please take this thorn of flesh? It's back to Paul. What was God's answer when he says 3 times I asked him to take the thorn of the flesh away? My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect, made complete in weakness. One of the paradoxes. Instead of removing the thorn, God provided his grace. But what is grace? We spent a lot of time on this last week. Grace is God's, I love this. Grace is God's goodness, loving kindness, and his favor directed towards you. That to me helps me understand grace. It's when God looks at you and he pours his favor on you because he is pleased with you. He looks at you, he sees a person after his own heart, just like David. Even though David killed someone and was an adulterer, he said, he's a man after my own heart, and he pours his favor on David. And there were consequences to David's sin. There are all these consequences, but God literally says he's a man after my own heart, and he pours his favor. That's what grace is when God pours his favor on you. Where am I? This will allow Paul to endure the thorn in the flesh, just like Job. Just like Job. Job realized through that whole process that it was the nearness of God was good for me. Anyway, okay. When God directs his goodness, loving kindness, and favor towards you, what does it accomplish? God first turns your heart to Christ. Any person that he pours his favor on, he first turns their heart to Christ. He then strengthens their faith in Christ. He builds their faith. Then he strengthens their knowledge of Christ. He gives them a Bible study, discipleship. He strengthens their knowledge. Then he strengthens their affection towards Christ. You begin to love him, love the Creator. He strengthens it. And then obedience to Christ. I find it interesting that obedience is last. Because it does. Obedience always follows. You don't just obey immediately. It's a robot. It takes time. Obedience is the last thing. In short, he gives you the power to live it out. Okay, one more video. That's what we're going to do. That's a review. And I think we're probably out of time after reviewing.
You try to describe
I don't know if you heard that.
this life. It could be difficult or
Oh, yeah,
daunting.
we can read that.
But when the people who wrote the Bible pondered the mystery of God, they consistently describe God's character as compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness. We're going to look at the second key word in this statement, gracious. The Hebrew word is chanun, which is related to the Hebrew noun chen. This word chen is often translated as grace or favor. And if you study how this word is used throughout the Bible, you find it fascinating. One meaning of chen is delightful or favorable. In the Psalms, a skilled poet is said to have lips of chen. That is, he can craft beautiful words that bring delight. Or a dazzling piece of jewelry is an ornament of chen. It attracts attention and favor. This is why chen is often the word used to describe a gift given with delight or favor. In these cases, chen could be translated as grace. Like in the story of Esther, who approaches the king of Persia to ask that she and her people be spared from death. She calls this a request for chen. And because the king delights in Esther, he favors her and grants her wish. So, giving a gift of favor is chen because it's motivated by delight. And the most extreme kind of chen is showing favor to someone who should get what they deserve, not a generous gift. Like Jacob, who cheated his brother Esau, ran away, and then after 20 years wants to come back and make things right. So he comes to Esau asking, "May I find fame in your eyes?" Jacob isn't asking for what is fair, but for favor. And surprisingly, that's what Esau gives him. He chooses to delight in his brother Jacob and show him grace that he doesn't deserve.
I just have to pause here real quick, because when we were looking at this, we were talking about Jacob and Esau and how this came to be. Before he could go and come before his brother who he wronged, what happened right before that?
He wrestled with God.
Yes,
And he was given a limp, kind of a thorn in the flesh.
Yes, so
Because he
it's
had
like,
to be humble before he could have the rim.
yes.
Now, fame requires a generous spirit, which people sometimes have. But in the Bible, the one who shows more fame than anyone else is God. Like when God rescued the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, and they quickly betrayed him by giving their allegiance to a golden idol as their God. But then, Moses steps in and asks God to consider giving a gift that they don't deserve. And God says yes, by showing the ultimate act of chesed, forgiveness and a promise to be with his people. This character trait of God is so reliable that over 40 times in the book of Psalms, people cry out for God's chesed when they're sick or in danger, or when the Israelites are in exile. And the biblical prophets like Isaiah looked back to God's chesed in the past and boldly declared that God will one day show chesed to his people by delivering them and all creation from death and ruin. Now, when we turn to the authors of the New Testament, they describe God's chesed with the Greek word charis, which means gracious gift. Like when we're introduced to Jesus in the Gospel of John, we're told that Jesus is God's glorious charis become human, sent into a world of people trapped in darkness and death. Because according to the Apostle Paul, we're like the living dead. God has handed humanity over to the destructive consequences of our selfish decisions. But, Paul says, God is rich in mercy, and by his charis, he's rescued us. He's talking about how Jesus' life, death, and resurrection are offered to us as a generous gift of life that is more powerful than death. And as with any gift, all one has to do is receive it. So, now you can see why the biblical authors talk so much about this description of God's character throughout the Bible. When people are willing to own their failures and ask God for fame, he has a consistent and generous response. God gives the gift of himself, his life, and his love. And this is what it means that God is gracious.
And that's just awesome. So when we humble ourselves, or God has to humble us, and we ask God for his favor. We don't ask for what we deserve. We deserve probably punishment or whatever. We ask God for his favor. And our loving Father is more than, can you imagine how overjoyed he is when one of his children says, "I was wrong. Would you show your favor back on me and let me back?" Even though he didn't ever throw us out. Imagine think of it for all the parents in the room. Think about it when your children do that. It's exactly what we do with our children. You don't, when your child, generally your child is in good favor with you. And then they do something really stupid. They totally disobey you and all that. And you're angry at them. They are out of favor. It doesn't mean they're out of the family. You didn't kick them out and you didn't kill them. But they're out of favor. And just the smallest little bit of sorry, just the smallest little bit of regret. And any parent in this room knows what that does in your heart. You say, yes, that second. Yes, come back into favor. Come back into favor of the family. That's what God's doing. It's just gorgeous. That's why I love the word grace. Grace is ephemeral. It's this kind of floaty term. It's favor. It's God giving you not what you deserve, but giving you the favor because you're his child. It's just beautiful.
And that word is the charis word is the word that says when Paul says, I pleaded 3 times about this that would depart from me, but he said to me, my favor is enough for you. Why? Because my power is made perfect in your weakness.
Because God, I'm looking on you, Paul, in my favor. What does that mean? my guidance, my love, my direction for your life to be meaningful and purposeful. All of that is on you, Paul.
Yeah.
And that is plenty for you to overcome a little thorn in the flesh. So I'm not going to take it away. Just rely on me. Know my favors with you. And that's what he tells his children.
Okay, I'm going to read this out of turn, Joel, because what you just said. I'm going to go to John 15. 15, no, I'm going to read this.
Okay, yeah,
John
read that
15.
out.
John 15, 5 through 7. Remember, this is Jesus speaking to the disciples, and he says, I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him bears much fruit. Because, why? Because apart from me, you can accomplish nothing. If anyone does not remain in me, he is thrown out like a branch and dries up, and branches are gathered up and thrown into the fire and burned up. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, the nearness of God is good for you, remember. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you want and it will be done for you.
That's awesome. And we're now to where we ended off last week. And we're at, we literally are. Right?
Yeah, right here.
That's where we want to start, where we're supposed to start today.
You want to hit
What time is it?
10:07. You can
10.
just skip
Okay, I'm just going to read them to you. We're on Roman numeral 6. We're starting the lesson now. Y'all ready? Roman numeral 6. And all this is this reasons why God used the thorn. Excuse me. Reasons why God uses the weak and the broken. Again, his power is made perfect in your weakness. So here are the reasons.
Wait,
Reasons
can
why
I
God.
say real quick? This makes me happy because he uses broken people. He uses people like us. If you think you can't be used by God, he uses Dick Benz at 60 years old. He uses me. He uses Joel. 2 people from broken homes can have a family and change our generational curse of our family tree. He can use broken people, and he wants to use broken people, people that are fully submitted to him.
He can throw you off the roof. I'm not kidding. I see that as how I identify with Joseph in a weird way. He can throw you off a roof to force you to soften and to work on your character so he can use you later. It's exactly how I see why I fell off the roof. And I knew it then, and I did not like it. Ask Meredith how mad I was for about a good year. A good year, I was good and mad, but I knew it the whole time what was going on. Anyway, okay. So never, y'all have heard me say this every week, is it shoots a gigantic torpedo into the faith and the health and wealth gospel. When I say God's favor on you, never interpret that to mean I will live in Candyland and it'll all be great. No, God's favor is he knows the whole connections, and so you may need some suffering to work on the character to accomplish what he has for you. It is not a health and wealth gospel. Could not be further from it. Okay, I'm going to read this and we can go. Reasons why God uses the weak and the broken. Reason number 1, we said this a lot, to demonstrate his power and glory. God uses human weakness to ensure he alone receives the glory. You are not to receive the glory to accomplish his mission. He is. So you need to be weak, so it's clear he did it. Reason number 2, to keep his servants humble. Weakness prevents pride and keeps us relying on God. Paul's thorn humbled him and made him deepen his trust in God. Reason number 3 is that he uses the weak and the broken to show that his grace is sufficient. MacArthur says, God's grace does not simply pacify us in suffering. It changes our hearts, humbles us, and reveals the sufficiency of Christ's strength in every trial. Through suffering, we are made more like Christ. That's the bottom line. Through suffering, we're made more like him. The transformative grace of God turns what feels like defeat into spiritual victory. And then we can love people the way he does. We're a heck of a lot less judgmental. We're a heck of a lot offended by the Dick Benz of the world when they're rough and gruff and send out mean tweets while they're trying to do ministry. Who is this man? And God says, we love anyway, and we understand that God's got all of us in. Okay, I'm going to move on. Reason number 4 why he uses the weak and the broken, to accomplish his will through faith. As we said earlier, is anything too hard for the Lord? Abraham and Sarah, despite their physical limitations, God fulfilled his promise of Isaac to show that faith, not human effort, accomplishes his will. What is faith? Commitment before knowledge. He's not going to show you the future, otherwise you would have no faith. Last reason, to encourage dependence on him. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Meredith just read John 15. God uses our insufficiencies to draw us into deeper reliance on his power and his guidance. And right here, we were going to literally read 2 full chapters of Judges. And this is awesome. We'll do this next week. For the manly man in the room, like we were talking about last week, this is the fighting time. And Gideon. This is awesome because it really applies to what we're doing right now. And I'm just going to give you one little snippet of Gideon, and we'll talk about it next week. Gideon, Israel was under a 7-year occupation by a foreign nation because they were worshiping foreign gods. That's your whole idea of the Old Testament, by the way. It's about loyalty. Are you loyal to Yahweh, or are you loyal to the little g God? That is your Old Testament. And yet again, they were loyal to the little g gods, the gods of the nations. And so God let the Midians take them for 7 years. And then he finally called out a little guy named Gideon. And unfortunately, Gideon put together 32,000. Gideon put together a 32,000 member army to fight back. Sounds great. What did God do? Who knows the story? Yep. He whittled it down to 300. Now you're ready to go destroy the entire army. He took, 32,000 minus 300. He took whatever that number is, 31,800. He sent 31,800 home and defeated the army with 3,000. Because God is to get the glory. And that's what he did. We'll talk about that next week. Okay.
Well, Gideon was a mighty warrior. That helps, right?
Yes, it was. Exactly.
But God called him a mighty warrior whenever he was fighting.
Yes.
Yeah.
When he was not yet.
Yeah, before he was. Interesting.
Yes.
Any other comments? It's 10:12. Got a couple comments? Anybody want to say anything?
You say
Yeah. Y'all take the last 3 minutes. I'll blame y'all for us being late. Anybody? All right, y'all, that's fun. This is, as we all know, we just teach whatever God's showing us. And I don't want to say it on video. Some of the things we're dealing with right now. When Meredith was reading this story about Gideon, I'm like, man,
It's like God's listening to us.
it's like God's listening to us and saying, I got this.
I got something for y'all to learn.
Y'all know when you have a project to do, the first thing you do is you start listing all the assets and all the people who can make it happen, all the money that can make it work. And God says, you don't need any of that. Just do what I told you. That's the demanding for faith. Okay, let's move on. Or you pray us out.
Dear Lord Jesus, thank you so much for taking on our weakness and showing us what weakness looks like. Even though you have and you are the power of God, you did not consider it something to hold on to, but you humbled yourself like we are and showed us that we must submit in weakness so that your power may rest on us. Lord, help us to remember to abide in you and for your words to abide in us so that we could ask anything of you and know that it would be your will, because it's not our will but yours to be done. Lord, we ask that each day this week that we take a moment to just be near you and to draw our strength from you. And we ask that you open our eyes to see all the wonderful things going on in the world that you're touching, and give you praise, actual verbal praise, Lord, to point others to you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, y'all.
Where were you?
Yeah.
So what's that?
Why this happened, are you us? And God responds with 84 of his own questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sit your mouth.
I do. I love that.
I know. Joel loves that too.